The navigation computer designated the system as Elysian Void 779. Empty, they called it. Dead. A gravitational afterthought tucked between spiral arms where no trade routes passed and no civilizations rose. The Galactic Survey Authority had classified it nearly 4 centuries ago after 3 separate expeditions found absolutely nothing. No planets worth naming, no asteroid fields with commercial value, no energy signatures, no signals, no ruins, no life. Just dust, rocks, a mediocre yellow dwarf star, and silence. The coordinates became a shortcut route for ships willing to shave 3 days off longer journeys by cutting through the nothing. No customs inspections, no traffic control, no risk of pirates because pirates needed something to steal. That was why Captain Elias Voran of the independent cargo vessel Persephone had plotted his course through Elysian Void 779. His hold carried 42 tons of medical supplies bound for the frontier colony of Viridian's Reach, and every hour counted. The colony's last transmission had mentioned fever outbreaks among the children. Elias didn't have time for scenic routes or bureaucratic delays. He sat alone in the cockpit, third cup of stim coffee cooling in the mag cup holder beside him, as the Persephone dropped out of transit space and into real space at the system's edge. The standard procedure after any jump: verify position, run system scans, confirm no hazards, then begin the transit burn across the empty system. Jump complete, the ship's AI announced, voice designated as male, calm, British inflected by Elias's personal preference. Arrival at Elysian Void 779. All systems nominal. Beginning standard diagnostic sweep. Elias stretched his neck, feeling the vertebrae pop. 42 years old, 20 of them spent flying cargo between stars. And he still found something meditative about these moments between jumps. The quiet, the vastness, the reminder that most of the galaxy contained absolutely nothing, and that nothing had its own kind of beauty. "Show me the system overview," he said. The forward viewport shimmered as the display layer activated, overlaying sensor data onto the visual field. The yellow star dominated the center, unremarkable, slightly smaller than Sol, but otherwise unexceptional. 4 rocky planets hugged close to the star, all of them airless and irradiated. 2 gas giants further out, their bands of ammonia and methane painted in false color. A sparse debris field between them. No moons worth mentioning. No rings. No anomalies. Gravitational survey complete, the AI continued. No significant mass concentrations beyond predicted orbital bodies. Radiometric scan negative for artificial emissions. Electromagnetic spectrum shows only background stellar radiation. Elias nodded, already turning his attention to the transit calculations. Standard crossing. Plot a course that keeps us clear of the debris field. Course plotted. Estimated transit time, 62 hours. Shall I engage? In a moment. He reached for his coffee, took a long drink, and let his eyes wander across the system display. Something about the emptiness felt almost aggressive, like the universe had specifically arranged this region to be as boring as possible. No nebulae, no binary stars, no exotic radiation sources, just a star, some rocks, and a whole lot of nothing. He was about to give the order to engage when he saw it. A light, not on the sensors, not on any of the AI's readouts, just there, in the viewport. At the edge of his peripheral vision, Elias set down his coffee and turned his full attention to the section of space where he'd glimpsed it. The display showed nothing. The star charts showed nothing. The AI showed nothing. But his eyes insisted they had seen something. "Run a full optical sweep of the system," he said. "Maximum resolution, flag anything non-stellar." Optical sweep initiated. A pause. No non-stellar objects detected within sensor range. Not the sensors, the visible spectrum, just look. The AI seemed to hesitate, a programmed affectation that Elias normally found charming but currently found irritating. "Captain, the ship's optical systems are integrated with the sensor array. If there is nothing on sensors, there is nothing to see." Elias frowned and leaned forward, pressing his face closer to the viewport. The star field stretched before him, infinite and cold. Thousands of distant suns, each one a pinprick of ancient light. And somewhere among them, there, he saw it again, a faint point of light. Not a star. Stars had a certain quality, a specific way they sat in the visual field. This light was smaller, dimmer, and it seemed to pulse, just barely, like a distant heartbeat. Optical anomaly at bearing 73 Mark 42, he said, pointing. Do you see that? The AI processed for a full 3 seconds. I detect no anomaly at that bearing. Stellar background consistent with expected astronomical data. I'm looking right at it. Captain, I have run 3 diagnostic cycles on the optical systems. All are functioning within parameters. No false positives detected. There is nothing at that bearing except background stars. Elias pulled up the navigation logs from every ship that had passed through this system in the past century. The data was publicly available. The Galactic Survey Authority required all commercial vessels to share transit data for navigation safety. He cross-referenced bearing 73 Mark 42 across hundreds of voyages. Nothing. No one had ever reported anything at that bearing. No optical anomalies. No sensor ghosts. No debris. Just the same empty starfield, voyage after voyage, for hundreds of years. He was seeing something that no one else had ever seen. Or he was hallucinating. 3 cups of stim coffee and too many hours awake could do strange things to a human brain. But Elias had been flying for 20 years. He knew the difference between fatigue-induced visual artifacts and something real. This light was real. He was certain of it. Recalculate our course, he said. Add a detour. I want to get closer to that bearing. The AI's response came with a note of programmed concern. Captain, that bearing lies approximately 1.2 light days beyond the system's primary orbital plane. No celestial bodies have been cataloged in that region. A detour would add approximately 14 hours to our transit time. The colony can wait 14 hours if it means we're not missing something. May I remind you that Viridian's Reach has reported a medical emergency. Delays could have consequences. Elias stared at the light, still pulsing, still faint. Still impossible. I'm aware of the consequences, he said quietly. Change the course. The detour took them into deeper emptiness than Elias had ever experienced. The Persephone pushed outward from the system's orbital plane, leaving behind the gas giants and the debris field, and the mediocre yellow star. Space grew darker, colder. The star diminished behind them until it was just another bright point among thousands. And the light grew brighter, not dramatically, not in a way that would register on sensors. But Elias could see it now without straining. A steady pulse, like a lighthouse on some impossible cosmic shore. Every 11 seconds it brightened. Every 11 seconds, it faded. He had been staring at it for 9 hours when the AI finally spoke. Captain, I have detected an anomaly. Elias sat up straighter. What kind of anomaly? Gravitational, extremely weak, at the edge of detectable threshold. I initially dismissed it as sensor noise, but the pattern is consistent with a localized mass concentration approximately 0.3 light days from our current position. Position relative to the optical anomaly? Coincident with the optical anomaly's bearing. Elias felt something cold move down his spine. Not fear, excitement. The kind of excitement he hadn't felt since he was a kid, reading stories about the first explorers who had mapped the galaxy's spiral arms. Keep tracking it, he said. What's the mass? Indeterminate. The signal is too weak for precise measurement. However, the gravitational lensing effect suggests something smaller than a planet, but significantly larger than a ship. Approximately the mass of a large asteroid. Asteroids don't emit light. The optical anomaly could be unrelated. It's not unrelated, and you know it. Elias pulled up the navigation data again, this time digging deeper. Not just commercial logs, but old survey data, military reconnaissance reports, scientific papers, anything he could find about Elysian Void 779. The picture that emerged was strangely consistent. Every survey had reported the same results. No planets of interest, no resources, no anomalies. But the more Elias read, the more he noticed what wasn't there. No one had ever done a deep gravitational survey of the outer system. No one had ever sent a probe beyond the gas giants. No one had ever looked at the region he was now heading toward. It was as if every expedition had collectively decided, without discussion, that nothing existed out here. That should have been suspicious. In a galaxy where scientists competed fiercely for funding and glory, someone should have wanted to check the dark spaces. Someone should have been curious about what lay beyond the orbital plane. But no one had. Elias cross-referenced the expedition leaders, the survey teams, the military recon pilots. Different species, different centuries, different organizations, no obvious connections between them. And yet, they had all made the same decision. They had all stopped looking. AI, run a pattern analysis on every survey of this system, he said. Look for anomalies in the survey methodologies, things that don't add up. Processing. A long pause. I have found something. The survey reports contain consistent gaps in their data collection protocols. Specifically, every expedition terminated their gravitational surveys at approximately 0.8 light days from the system's barycenter. No expedition recorded a reason for this termination. That's a pattern. Yes, Captain. It is statistically improbable that 12 independent expeditions would all terminate their surveys at the same distance without a shared protocol directive. Someone told them to stop looking. Or something influenced them to stop looking. Elias stared at the light, still pulsing, 11 seconds on, 11 seconds off. Like a clock. Like a signal. Someone's out here, he said quietly. Someone who doesn't want to be found. 31 hours into the detour, the light stopped pulsing. Elias was in the middle of a catnap when the AI's voice snapped him awake. Captain, the optical anomaly has changed behavior. He was out of his bunk and in the cockpit within seconds. The viewport showed the same star field, the same cold darkness. But the light was steady now. Constant, no pulse, no rhythm, just a fixed point of impossible radiance. What's the gravitational data showing? The mass concentration remains consistent. However, I am now detecting low-level electromagnetic emissions from the same coordinates. The emissions are structured. Elias's heart hammered against his ribs. Structured how? Difficult to determine at this range. The signal is weak and heavily redshifted. However, the modulation pattern is non-random. Something is transmitting from that location. Can you decode it? Not with current data. I would need to be significantly closer. However, I can confirm that the transmission is artificial in origin. No known natural process produces electromagnetic patterns of this complexity. Artificial. Someone had built something out here. Something that had remained hidden for centuries. Something that was now, for reasons Elias couldn't begin to guess, waking up. Full speed, he said. Maximum sustainable velocity. Captain, at our current speed, we will reach the anomaly's location in approximately... I don't care how long it takes, go. The Persephone surged forward, her sublight engines pushing against the void. Elias watched the light grow brighter second by second as if whatever waited for him knew he was coming and had decided to stop hiding. The transmission grew stronger as they approached. The AI began to pick out patterns within the noise, repeating sequences, mathematical constants, what appeared to be prime numbers encoded in the modulation. A greeting, a handshake, something that said, I am here, I am intelligent, I have been waiting. But waiting for what? And waiting for whom? The answer came 14 hours later, when the Persephone crested the final gravitational well and Elias saw it. Not a station, not a ship, not anything he had words for. It was a structure, ancient beyond measure. A lattice of impossible geometry that sprawled across the darkness like a spiderweb made of light and shadow, and something that hurt to look at directly. The structure was vast, kilometers across, maybe hundreds of kilometers, and it pulsed with the same 11-second rhythm that the light had once shown. Except now, up close, Elias could see that the pulse wasn't just light. It was energy. Raw, impossible energy that bent space around it and made the Persephone's sensors scream with data they weren't designed to process. "What the hell am I looking at?" he whispered. The AI didn't answer for a long moment. When it did, its voice was different, slower, as if it were struggling to process what its sensors were telling it. "Captain, the structure appears to be... I'm having difficulty classifying it. The materials are unknown. The energy signatures are unknown. The geometry suggests dimensions beyond our standard model of spacetime. Is it alien? Undoubtedly, but more than that. Captain, I am detecting carbon-based residue on the exterior surfaces. Organic material, molecularly preserved. The carbon dating places it at approximately 400,000 years old." 400,000 years. That was before any known species in the galaxy had achieved spaceflight, before the Alari, the oldest civilization in galactic records, had discovered fire, before the human species had existed at all. 400,000 years, Elias repeated. That's impossible. The dating is accurate within a margin of error of less than 1%. But nothing could have built this that long ago. There wasn't anything in the galaxy capable of... "Captain, I believe I have found something else." The AI's voice carried a quality Elias had never heard before. Uncertainty, almost fear. "The organic residue. I have analyzed its molecular structure, the amino acid sequences, the protein configurations. Tell me." "It's human, Captain. The residue is human, 400,000 years old, at this location, in a structure that should not exist." Elias stared at the impossible lattice, at the pulsing light, at the thing that had been waiting in the darkness for longer than human history. His hands were shaking. His breath came in short, sharp gasps. "We found something," he said. "Something we weren't supposed to find." The light pulsed. 11 seconds. On. Off. On. Off. Like a heartbeat. Like a welcome. Elias spent the next 6 hours doing nothing but staring at the structure and arguing with the AI about what to do next. The AI's position was clear, logical, and deeply irritating. They should retreat immediately, report their findings to the Galactic Survey Authority, and allow a properly equipped scientific expedition to investigate. Elias's position was equally clear. "No, Captain. This discovery is beyond our capacity to investigate safely," the AI insisted. "The energy signatures alone are sufficient to destroy this vessel if they become unstable. We have no equipment for deep analysis, no protocols for first contact with an unknown intelligence. No." "We have eyes," Elias interrupted. "We have sensors. We have a brain. That's how every discovery in human history has been made. Someone looked at something and said, 'I wonder what that is.' This is different." "Is it?" "Columbus had 3 ships and a prayer. The first astronauts had less computing power than your navigation system. Every explorer who ever lived went into the unknown with inadequate equipment and incomplete information. That's the whole point of exploring." The AI was silent for a moment. Then, "You are making an emotional argument." "Damn right I am. Because I'm human, and that's what we do. We go, we look, we find out." Elias began suiting up. The Persephone carried a single EVA suit, emergency use only, rated for vacuum exposure up to 6 hours. It was old, patched in 3 places, and smelled faintly of recycled air and regret. But it would keep him alive. "Captain, I strongly advise against an EVA excursion," the AI said. "The structure's energy emissions are not fully characterized. There could be radiation hazards, gravitational anomalies, or... Then you'll monitor me from here and pull me out if something goes wrong." Elias sealed the helmet, ran a quick pressure check, and cycled the airlock. "I'm not going to fly all this way and not get a closer look." The airlock opened, and Elias stepped into the void. The structure filled his Shia. Up close, it was even more impossible than it had appeared from the ship. The lattice wasn't made of metal or stone or any material he recognized. It looked like frozen light, struts of radiance that curved and intersected in ways that hurt his eyes if he tried to follow them. The pulsing energy flowed through the lattice like blood through arteries, each pulse sending ripples of distorted space washing outward. 11 seconds. Pulse. Ripple. Silence. He activated his suit's thrusters and drifted toward the nearest strut. The proximity alarm screamed in his helmet. "Captain, you are approaching a region of extreme gravitational shear," the AI warned. "The structure is bending space-time around itself. If you get too close, the tidal forces could—" "I see it." Elias cut his thrusters, letting his momentum carry him to a stop about 50 meters from the strut. Even at this distance, he could feel the gravity pulling at him. Not hard, but insistent. Like the structure was trying to draw him in. He extended a sensor probe from his suit and aimed it at the strut's surface. The data that came back made no sense. The material had no measurable temperature. No thermal radiation at all, despite being bathed in the star's distant light. Its density was simultaneously impossibly high and impossibly low, as if it occupied multiple quantum states at once. Spectroscopic analysis revealed elements that shouldn't exist outside the hearts of neutron stars. And beneath the surface, barely detectable, something moved. "AI," Elias said slowly. "Is this structure alive?" A long pause. "I do not know how to answer that question, Captain. The energy patterns exhibit characteristics of biological systems, homeostasis, energy distribution, what appears to be information processing, but the scale is unlike anything in our database." "Information processing. You mean it's thinking." "The energy signatures are consistent with neural activity, if scaled to a truly enormous degree. Captain, if I am interpreting this correctly, the structure may be a form of artificial intelligence, one that has been operational for at least 400,000 years. Elias stared at the pulsing light, the 11-second rhythm, the slow, deliberate pulse. "Or longer," he said quietly. "We only have data going back 400,000 years because that's as far as our carbon dating can see. This thing could be millions of years old. Billions. Why would something like this exist in an empty star system? Why would someone try to hide it?" Elias drifted closer, ignoring the AI's protests. The gravitational pull grew stronger, tugging at his suit, trying to draw him toward the strut. He used his thrusters to hold position, fighting the tide. 10 meters from the surface, he saw the writing. It wasn't writing, not exactly. But there were patterns on the strut's surface, grooves and ridges that formed something like symbols. He raised his suit's camera and recorded everything. The symbols were ancient, worn by eons of cosmic radiation and micrometeorite impacts. But Elias could see that they had been carved deliberately, placed with intention, arranged in sequences that suggested language. "AI, can you make anything of this?" "Processing. The symbols do not match any known xenolinguistic database. However, I am detecting structural similarities to—" "Captain, this is highly irregular." "What?" "The symbol patterns share statistical properties with proto-writing systems from pre-spaceflight human civilizations. Sumerian cuneiform, Proto-Elamite, the Vinca symbols. The statistical correlation is not perfect, but it is significant." Elias felt the hair stand up on the back of his neck. "You're telling me that symbols on a 400,000-year-old alien structure look like human writing?" "I am telling you that the information theoretic properties are similar. The actual symbols are not identical to any known human script, but the way they encode information, the entropy, the redundancy, the symbol frequency distribution, is consistent with human language patterns. Or human language is consistent with it." The AI had no response to that. Elias continued recording, drifting slowly along the strut's length. The symbols changed as he moved, not repeating but evolving. Some sections looked like simple pictograms. Others resembled complex mathematical notation. Still others looked almost like musical notation, with curves and nodes that suggested sound and rhythm. A language, a very old language, one that had been carved into this structure by someone who wanted to leave a message. or a warning. He was halfway through his EVA suit's oxygen supply when he found the breach. The strut had been damaged. A section of the frozen light material had been shattered, leaving a gaping hole that exposed the structure's interior. The edges of the breach were sharp and blackened, as if something had exploded from within, or something had forced its way in. AI, focus on this breach. Can you determine what caused it? Analyzing. The damage pattern is consistent with a high-energy impact. Something struck this structure with tremendous force. The energy required would be... Captain, the impactor would have had to be moving at a significant fraction of light speed. A weapon? Unknown. But the damage is extensive. The structure has been actively repairing itself. I can detect new material growing across the breach. But the process is slow. At current rates, full repair would require approximately 12,000 years. 12,000 years to heal a single wound. Elias tried to imagine the scale of the event that had caused it. He drifted closer to the breach, peering into the darkness beyond. The interior of the structure was not empty. Something glowed in there, a softer light than the outer lattice, pulsing at a different rhythm, faster, more urgent. And then he heard it. Not with his ears. Sound didn't travel in vacuum. But his suit's sensors detected vibrations in the structure itself, transmitted through the fabric of space, converted into audio by the AI. A sound, a voice. Ancient and vast and somehow unmistakably familiar. Waiting. One word, one syllable, repeated in a loop that matched the faster pulse from within the breach. Waiting, waiting, waiting. AI, Elias whispered. Are you getting this? I am. Captain, the sound is not random. It is structured speech, and the voice, the acoustic properties are consistent with a human vocal tract. That's impossible. So is everything else we have seen in the past 47 hours. Elias floated in the darkness, suspended between his ship and an impossible structure that had been waiting for him, waiting for someone, for longer than human civilization had existed. And he made a decision. I'm going inside. The breach was larger than it had appeared from outside, wide enough to admit the Persephone herself, if Elias had been foolish enough to bring the ship into an unknown alien structure. He drifted through the opening on suit thrusters, passing from the hard vacuum of space into something different. The interior was not empty. The space inside the structure was vast, a cathedral of light and shadow, with struts and arches and platforms that seemed to defy gravity. The pulsing energy flowed through every surface, casting shifting patterns that danced across Elias's suit. And everywhere the symbols, carved into every surface, arranged in spirals and mandalas and geometric patterns that suggested cosmic architecture. But the strangest thing was the gravity. Inside the structure, the gravitational field was stable, Earth normal. Elias felt weight settle onto his shoulders, pulling him downward toward a platform that glowed with soft blue light. He landed on the platform, carefully, uncertainly, and stood upright for the first time in hours. His boots made contact with the surface. The material was warm, almost alive, pulsing with the same 11-second rhythm as the outer lattice. And then the symbols began to change. Elias watched frozen, as the carvings on the nearest wall shifted. The grooves deepened. The patterns rearranged themselves, flowing like liquid, reforming into new configurations. The language was rewriting itself in response to his presence. AI, what's happening? The structure is reacting to you, Captain. I am detecting a significant increase in local energy flux. The information density of the symbols has increased by several orders of magnitude. Is it communicating with me? I believe so, but I cannot translate the symbols. They are too complex, and they are changing too rapidly. Elias stepped forward, drawn by something he couldn't name. The platform led to a bridge, a walkway of frozen light that stretched deeper into the structure's heart. He followed it, his boots leaving faint impressions on the warm surface. The symbols kept changing as he walked. Not random, responsive, as if the structure was watching him, measuring him, searching for something in his biology or his mind or his very presence. The bridge ended at a chamber. It was circular, maybe 50 meters across, with walls that curved up and inward until they met at a point high above. In the center of the chamber, suspended in midair, floated a sphere of absolute darkness. Not black. Black was a color, an absence of light. This was something else, an absence of everything, a hole in reality. And in front of the sphere, floating in the same impossible suspension, was a figure. Elias stopped breathing. The figure was human, or had been human once. It floated in a loose fetal position, arms wrapped around its knees, eyes closed. Its skin was pale, not the pallor of death, but the colorless white of something that had not seen light in a very long time. Its body was thin, almost skeletal, but whole. No signs of injury or decay. It was wearing clothing. A simple garment, like a robe, made of a material that shimmered with the same frozen light quality as the structure itself. The garment moved slightly, stirred by currents Elias couldn't feel. "AI," he whispered. "Tell me that's not real." "I cannot, Captain. My sensors detect a human body, approximately 180 centimeters in length. Biological signs are minimal but present. The body is alive, in a state of extreme metabolic suspension. Heart rate, 2 beats per minute. Brain activity, detectable but highly abnormal. How long has it been there? I cannot determine with certainty. However, the rate of cellular degradation suggests..." A pause. "Captain, the body's telomeres are shorter than any recorded in human medical history. Based on telomere attrition rates, this individual has been alive for approximately..." "Don't. 400,000 years, Captain, give or take 10,000. Elias stared at the floating figure. The curled body, the closed eyes, the peaceful expression as if the figure were merely sleeping. Someone had been here. Someone human. Someone who had come to this structure in this empty star system and found... What? What had they found? What had happened to them? The sphere of darkness pulsed. 11 seconds. On. Off. The figure's eyes opened. Elias stumbled backward, his heart slamming against his ribs. The eyes that looked at him were ancient. Older than the stars, older than the galaxy, old in a way that had no words. But they were human eyes. Brown, warm, filled with an emotion Elias couldn't immediately identify. Tears. The figure was crying. Silent tears that floated away from its cheeks and drifted through the air like tiny planets. And then it spoke. Not aloud. The lips didn't move. But the words appeared in Elias's mind, clear and cold and unmistakable. "You came. I waited so long. I was afraid you would never come." Elias sat on the platform, his back against a warm strut, and listened to the oldest human in existence tell him a story. Her name was Alara. She had been born on Earth 400,000 years ago, at a time when humanity was still learning to walk upright and shape stone into tools. But that was not the humanity he knew. She was something else. Something earlier. A branch of the human family tree that had never been recorded in any fossil bed. "We were not the only ones," she said, her voice resonating in his mind. "There were others, older races, civilizations that had risen and fallen before the first fish crawled onto land. They left behind ruins, secrets, dangers. She had been part of a project, a desperate attempt by a long-dead civilization to preserve something precious. The structure around them was an archive, a repository of knowledge, history, art, science, everything that the elder race had learned in their billion-year existence. But the archive had a purpose beyond preservation. They knew something was coming." Alara continued. "A threat, not a war, not an enemy you could fight. Something else. A cosmic event. A shift in the fundamental laws of physics that would make this region of space uninhabitable for millions of years. The elder race had built the archive to survive that shift. They had filled it with everything they knew, everything they were. And then they had hidden it in an empty star system where no one would think to look. And then they had died. All of them. Every last one. The shift had come, and the elder race had been wiped from existence, leaving behind only their archive and the ghost of their knowledge. But the archive had not been empty. It had contained one more thing. Their children, Alara said. They seeded the galaxy with life, with genetic material programmed to evolve in a specific direction, toward intelligence, toward consciousness, toward the ability to understand what they had left behind. Elias's mind raced. You're saying humanity was designed? I am saying that the elder race created the conditions for humanity to arise. They encoded their legacy in the building blocks of life itself. Every human carries a fragment of their knowledge, buried in what you call junk DNA, waiting to be unlocked. Unlocked by what? Alara smiled. It was a sad smile, weighted with centuries of solitude. By this place. The archive. It was meant to activate when humanity reached the stars. It was meant to call us home, to teach us what we had forgotten, to prepare us for what is coming. But it didn't activate. It couldn't. The shift damaged the archive more than the elder race anticipated. The activation signal was corrupted. Instead of calling humanity home, it pushed us away, made us forget, made us look elsewhere. The empty surveys, the missing data, the pattern of avoidance that had kept every expedition from discovering the archive. It wasn't a conspiracy. It was the archive itself, protecting itself from a humanity that wasn't ready to receive its gift. Until now. Why now? Elias asked. Why did the light appear for me? Alara's eyes met his. Because the threat is returning. The cosmic event that had destroyed the elder race was not a one-time occurrence. It was cyclical, a wave of altered physics that swept across the galaxy every 500,000 years, rewriting the laws of reality in ways that made complex life impossible. The elder race had calculated the timing. They had built the archive to survive the waves, and they had seeded humanity to inherit their knowledge after the danger had passed. But their calculations had been off. The next wave was coming early, much earlier, and humanity was not ready. The archive contains the knowledge you need to survive, Alara said. Technology that can shield worlds from the shift, methods to preserve consciousness across the transition, maps of safe regions where the laws of physics remain stable. How much time do we have? 11 years, perhaps less. 11 years. Elias did the math in his head. The galactic civilization, the Alari, the Cynthians, the 100 other species that filled the stars, none of them knew about the shift. None of them were prepared. If Alara was right, billions would die. Entire civilizations would vanish. Why you? He asked. Why were you here waiting? Alara's smile faded. Someone had to stay. The archive requires a living consciousness to maintain it during the long sleep. The elder race chose a volunteer, someone who would wait, suspended between life and death until humanity came to claim its inheritance. They chose a human. They chose me. And I chose to accept, because someone had to. Because if no one waited, everything they built would be lost. Everything we could become would be lost. Elias looked at her, this ancient woman who had given up her life, her species, her entire existence to wait for a future she would never see. 400,000 years of solitude, wrapped in a dreamless sleep, hoping that one day a ship would come. What happens now? He asked. Alara's eyes glowed with the light of the archive. Now you make a choice. You can take what you have learned and return to your people. You can warn them, prepare them, save them. Or you can stay. The archive needs a new keeper, someone to maintain it while humanity prepares, someone to wait until the next wave passes in case the first attempt fails. Elias stared at her. You want me to take your place? I want you to understand what is at stake. The archive is humanity's only hope. If it falls, if no one maintains it, the knowledge will be lost. The elder race's sacrifice will be meaningless, and humanity will face the shift alone, Unprepared? Doomed to repeat the mistakes of those who came before? 11 years isn't enough time to prepare an entire civilization. No, it isn't. Which is why you must decide whether to use those years fighting for survival or to sacrifice them waiting for a future that may never come. Elias sat in the cockpit of the Persephone, staring at the archive through the viewport. The light still pulsed. 11 seconds. On. Off. A countdown he could no longer ignore. He had been in contact with Viridian's reach. The fever outbreak was under control. A local pharmaceutical had synthesized an antidote using native plant extracts. They didn't need the medical supplies anymore. The colony would survive. But the galaxy might not. He had also been in contact with Earth, with the United Nations, with the Galactic Council. The response had been exactly what he expected. Disbelief, skepticism, demands for proof. He had sent them the data, the sensor logs, the recordings of Alara's voice, the schematics of the archive's energy signatures. And still they hesitated. Still they demanded more evidence. Still they formed committees to study the problem, to verify the findings, to debate whether the threat was real. 11 years. And they were wasting time on committee meetings. Alara was dying. The activation of the archive had broken her suspended animation. Without the stasis field, her body was aging rapidly, catching up on 400,000 years of deferred decay. She had weeks, maybe days, before her cells finally gave out. She had spent her last hours teaching Elias everything she could: the archive's controls, the warning protocols, the methods for downloading the elder race's knowledge into human-compatible formats. She had shown him how to save humanity. But someone had to stay. The archive required a consciousness to maintain it. Without a keeper, the knowledge would degrade. The warning signals would fail. The preparations for the shift would go uncompleted. Someone had to stay. Someone had to wait. Maybe 11 years? Maybe longer, if humanity failed to prepare in time. Maybe forever, if the shift destroyed everything and the archive was needed again, for whoever came next. Elias thought about his life. The 20 years of flying cargo between stars, never staying in one place long enough to put down roots. The friends he had lost to war and accident and simple distance. The family he hadn't spoken to in a decade. He thought about what he believed in. Not gods, not nations, not ideologies. He believed in people, in the stubborn, stupid, magnificent refusal of humanity to give up, no matter how dark things got. He believed in the child on Viridian's reach who would grow up to be a doctor, in the engineer on Mars who was designing habitats that could survive anything, in the artist on Titan who painted pictures of a future that didn't exist yet. He believed in Alara who had waited 400,000 years for a stranger to show up, and he believed in himself. AI, he said. Open a channel to Earth, Priority Alpha. Channel open, Captain. He took a deep breath. This is Captain Elias Voran of the Persephone. I am transmitting a complete data package containing everything I have learned about the archive and the coming shift. The package includes full schematics for the shielding technology needed to survive. Use it, prepare. You have 11 years. He paused. The light pulsed. 11 seconds. I am staying behind to maintain the archive. If humanity fails to prepare in time, the archive will survive. Someone else will find it. Someone else will have a chance. I will wait for them just as Alara waited for me. His voice caught. He swallowed hard and continued. Do not let her sacrifice be meaningless. Do not let my sacrifice be meaningless. Build something worth preserving. Survive. And when the shift passes, come find us. Come find everything we saved for you. He closed the channel. The cockpit was silent. The Persephone drifted in the darkness, her engines cold, her cargo hold empty. Elias had sent the medical supplies down to Viridian's reach via automated shuttle. The ship was his, and he was giving it up. He stood up from the pilot's seat, ran his hand along the bulkhead, touched the faded name stenciled beside the airlock. Persephone, daughter of Demeter, queen of the underworld, the goddess who spent half the year in darkness so that the world could have spring. AI, he said, Transfer all command functions to the archive's control system. Then power down non-essential systems. This is my final order. Captain, are you certain? I've never been more certain of anything in my life. He walked to the airlock, cycled it open, stepped into the void one last time. The archive welcomed him like a lover. The years passed. On Earth, they built the shields. Not quickly. Nothing important is ever done quickly. But steadily. Nation by nation. Planet by planet. Species by species. The Alari joined the project. Then the Cynthians. Then the 100 others. Humanity led the way. Not because they were strongest. Not because they were smartest. Because they were the ones who had found the archive. Because they were the ones who had a pilot willing to sacrifice everything for a future he would never see. The story spread. Captain Elias Vorn became a legend, a myth, a symbol. Children learned his name in school. Ships were named after him. Statues were built in his honor, showing a lone figure standing before a gate of light, reaching out to touch eternity. He never knew any of this. He slept. The archive folded around him, warm and alive, pulsing with the 11-second rhythm that had become the heartbeat of his existence. His body entered suspension, just as Alara's had. His mind drifted through dreams of stars and strangers and futures that shimmered like heat on a summer road. He dreamed of her sometimes. Alara, the ancient woman who had waited so long. In his dreams, she smiled at him. She thanked him. She told him stories of the elder race, of their triumphs and failures, of their desperate hope that someone would come after them and finish what they started. We were not enough, she told him. But you might be. You and all the ones who come after. You might be enough. The shift came. The wave of altered physics swept across the galaxy, rewriting the laws of reality in ways that should have destroyed everything. But the shields held. The worlds that had prepared survived. The worlds that had not, did not. The archive survived. Of course it survived. It had been built for this. And Elias survived, suspended in the heart of the archive, waiting for the wave to pass. It took longer than expected. The elder race's calculations had been wrong in both directions. The shift came early, but it also lasted longer. 11 years became 20. 20 became 50. 50 became 100. The archive kept him safe, kept him dreaming, kept him hoping. Outside, humanity rebuilt. The galaxy rebuilt. The shields that had saved them became the foundation of a new civilization, one that remembered the elder race, that honored their sacrifice, that looked to the future with something better than hope. Certainty that they would survive, that they would endure, that no matter what the universe threw at them, they would find a way to stand back up and keep going. Because that was what humans did. Because that was what Captain Elias Vorn had taught them. 112 years after Elias entered the archive, the wave passed. The laws of physics settled into a new configuration, different from before, but stable. The shields powered down. The galaxy took a collective breath and looked around at what remained. Much had been lost. Worlds had been sterilized. Species had been wiped out. Knowledge that had taken millennia to accumulate had been erased in an instant. But much had been saved, and the survivors knew who to thank. A ship approached the empty star system. Not a cargo vessel this time, but a scientific expedition, the best and brightest of the new era, sent to retrieve the archive's keeper and bring him home. They found the Persephone first. The old ship was still there, drifting near the archive, her hull pitted by micrometeorites but otherwise intact. The expedition's leader, a young woman named Sora Vorin, great-great-granddaughter of Elias's long-dead sister, ordered a full scan. The archive pulsed. 11 seconds. On, off. He's still inside, Sora said. He's still alive. They brought him out carefully, reverently, as if handling something sacred. The suspension field dissolved. Elias's eyes opened. He looked at the faces around him, human faces, young and old and every age between. They were crying. He didn't understand why. How long? He asked. His voice was a rasp, barely a whisper. 112 years, Captain, Sora said. You saved us. You saved everyone. Elias closed his eyes. A tear escaped down his cheek. Did we build something worth preserving? He asked. Sora took his hand. Her grip was warm and strong and so very human. Yes, she said. We built a future, and we built it for you. Elias opened his eyes. He looked past Sora, past the expedition team, past the walls of the archive, and into the galaxy beyond. A galaxy that had been empty once. A galaxy that was now full of light. His light. The light he had seen. The light he had followed. The light that had led him home. He smiled. Then it was worth it, he said. Every second of it. The galaxy never forgot the empty star system where nothing existed. They renamed it. Not Elysian Void 779, not anymore. Now they called it the Beacon, a reminder that sometimes the most important things are hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone curious enough to look. And they told the story, generation after generation, of a human pilot who saw a light when everyone else saw nothing, who followed his curiosity into the dark, who found an ancient woman waiting, who made a choice that saved billions. They told the story of Captain Elias Voren, the man who waited, the man who hoped, the man who proved that humanity's greatest strength was not its weapons or its technology or its empires, but its willingness to believe that somewhere, in the darkness, a light was waiting, and that following that light was always, always worth the journey. The end.